So I wanted to do something a bit different with this one. I'm going to key out the exact same scene using 4 different lighting setups. This is kind of a common task I have as a color key artist or doing concept stuff, things like that, where you want to explore your options and see what you can come up with, and not settle on the first thing that you happen to do. So, and it's also good if you're working like for a director or something to give them options. And lighting is a really powerful way to not only influence somebody's emotions, but also to direct the eye and tell the viewer where to look in a particular composition. So in this first one here, I'm gonna play up this middle ground. The scene is like this bridge, and there's a character in front of it, in sort of like a swampy type foresty area. And in this one, I'm just gonna play up some dapple light on the bridge, which is sort of my middle ground element. And I'm actually not going to draw as much attention to the character in this one. Although the character still should be readable. If there's a character in the scene, usually you want the character to read. So the character's still going to be readable, but I want you to look in the middle ground more at this sort of dapple light coming through. So you'll notice in this particular color key, that's the first thing I'm sort of trying to get, is the relationship of light back there. And then that will I key off of that to paint everything else. It's sort of a thing I do. I learned from traditional oil painting, where if I'm outside and I see something, I see something that I like and I want to capture it. I try and get it quick before the light goes away or something like that. And then once I have it, I'll then relate everything else to it. It's a one way of working that I find pretty conducive to making a good picture. So I'm trying to do that here, and you'll see that. I've established a full range of contrast with the lightest light being fairly light, and there's some very dark values in there as well. And I established that early on, and then I'll just start working within it. And at this point, this color key is almost done. Every single painting, this is obviously sped up, but every single painting took about 15 to 20 minutes each. This one was about 15 minutes. So there's no time for rendering or things like that. You just want to make your point and move to the next one. So, and here's the next one. In this one, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to play up the foreground where the character is and have the bridge almost just recede into the darkness in the back. So the values in this one are going to go from lightest in the foreground to middle value in the middle ground and darkest value in the background, whereas the other one had the lightest value in the foreground. So again, I'm starting with the bridge. For me, the bridge is something I could latch onto visually the easiest. So I did that first, and already I'm moving on to some of the lighter areas. I'm not going to talk too much about technique in this so much as I am like conceptualizing. You can look at some of my other videos or many other artists' YouTube videos for technique, and I'll do some more of those as well. But this one is more about just thinking about ideas and sort of stretching your imagination on how a scene can read and how you can play up light and character and things like that. So I haven't actually even put in the character in this one yet, which maybe is a bad idea, but I'm pretty confident that I know where I'm going with it. And here she comes right here. And I'm gonna go lighter with that foreground just for contrast. But there's the character. Obviously, she's going to cast a pretty hard shadow because I'm pretending like there's light beaming straight down. That brings me to another important point that I learned a few years ago, was when you're designing things like this, like for me, I'm always thinking about like film, because that's just the medium I usually work in. But you have to think, it's beneficial to think of your sets as though they're on a stage. I'm not really thinking about this as if it was real. I'm thinking about it like I'm lighting it as if it were on a stage, and I'm using any kind of light I need to contrive a lighting scenario that is going to be beneficial for readability and everything like that. So in this case, I'm shining like a really bright spotlight in the foreground and letting everything else sort of recede back there. And you're sort of relying on your knowledge of how light works. I get that from painting outdoors. I paint outdoors every chance I get, and this painting outdoors a lot and doing a lot of study from real life allows me to work without reference, and that's that's a skill you sort of need to be able to do stuff like this, because if you're relying on photos, well, you have to now find 4 photo references for these 4 lighting situations, and that's just going to waste your time. And if you're doing this for a day job, you certainly don't want to be wasting your time browsing Google for a picture before you want to paint, right? You just want to jump in there. And I'm not saying that each one of these is a masterful painting, but I'm just trying to see what I can come up with, and if it doesn't work, I'll just move to the next one. I'm not putting any stock in any particular one. So in this one, I'm totally changing the time of day. This is going to be like an early morning type thing, or the light is now in the background. So in this one, the lightest area is the background, and then the middle ground will be another middle value, and then the foreground will be darker. And this one, the character will really read strong because she's going to be a dark silhouette, almost a dark silhouette over the light background. And I'll play that up as this one goes along. I think this one actually took me the longest. I think probably because, in my opinion, it was the most complex lighting situation. This one is almost a little more naturalistic, as though this one actually were lit by actual daylight and not some contrived stage setup. Now, there is one painting concept I want to talk about here that I find extremely important, and that's ambient light. Ambient light is anything that is not lit by the direct light source. So in this case, it'd be anything that is not lit by the sunlight is lit by ambient light. Ambient light in real life comes from the sky, and it comes from the direct light, which can bounce off of objects onto objects that are in the shadow. And ambient light it's like a painter's best friend. It is your excuse to play with all kinds of color. And because when you have a light bouncing around like ambient light does, it can bounce off anything, and it takes the color from whatever it bounces off and illuminates, it imparts that color on whatever it bounces onto. And there's so many objects outside or things like this that light can hit and bounce off. Like you'll see me on the bridge here, on all of the illustrations actually. They're not, I could ask you, what color is that bridge? And you probably won't be able to tell me, and I couldn't tell you either what color that bridge is, because there's so many colors going into it. It's almost as though local color doesn't really exist in real life. It's almost like a theoretical thing. And really what you do is you start with like a local color, and then you just start vibrating colors into that until you have a field of color that is built up through thinking about reflected light, about what colors are around it. And that's really what will give you that mature looking color palette, and also make your painting look like as though it's lit by real light. Anyway, so enough about that. Maybe I'll cover more of that later, but in this one really quick. I actually am not doing too much color work in this one. This is more value based, again, just to explore lighting. This one's going to be super contrived, and it's almost as though I'm shining like a big light with those barn doors on it, and just hitting this, putting a big streak of light down the bottom third of this picture. This is just dramatic lighting, which I really enjoy. So, in a film, you can get away with this all the time. You don't see this kind of lighting too much in nature, but this is a good case of applying things that I've learned from real life lighting situations, and doing sort of a caricatured version of it, and really cheesing it up. Anyway, so this one, here's some color coming into the bridge. You can see some strokes going in. There's some cooler stuff against some warmer strokes. Can you see that happening there? And it's giving that bridge sort of a vibration of color that actually exists if you're looking outside. And which is why I'm a big proponent of going outside with your palette and your paint and just painting what you see. And it's one of the hardest things that I've ever tried, which is what keeps me going out there. So this one, not too much to say really. Flipping the canvas back and forth always like I always do, just to keep a fresh eye on things. And I think this one was about a 10-minute color key. There's a bit of a levels adjustment on it, and I'll erase into that. And I realized I forgot that the girl is wearing a blue dress, so I'll put that in a moment. Here we go. So that about wraps it up. Thanks a lot for watching, and thanks to those who have subscribed, and I'll see you next time.